Every American citizen is endowed with certain unalienable rights, but how can the limitations of one's constitutional rights possibly be beneficial? Good afternoon. My name is Arima Malcolm Parker, and in this course we have been posed the question: how are the limitations of students' rights in illustration of the First Amendment in U.S. public schools? But before we can fully understand the illustration of First Amendment in the public schools, we must understand the First Amendment. According to the Amendment 1 of the Constitution, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, nor can it establish laws that would limit freedom of speech, press, the right to assemble, petition, or petition the government. Now, these are constitutional rights, but they are limited in public institutions, such as public schools, to ensure the order and safety of the general public. They're limited by time, place, and manner restrictions. According to West's American Encyclopedia of American Law, time regulates when individuals can express themselves, place regulates where individuals can express themselves, and manner, it must be a form of expression that is appropriate for both time and place. I've come to the conclusion that my claim is that limitations of student rights in public schools are necessary in order to promote order in the public school environment and ensure that a healthy learning environment can exist. Now let's look at one application of time, place, and manner restrictions in a public school setting with the Tinker versus Des Moines Supreme Court case. In this case, Mary Beth Tinker and a group of students wore armbands, depicted here, as a form of protest, peaceful and symbolic protest against the Vietnam War. The school administrators suspended these students because they thought that this form of protest was a distraction in the school environment. However, review from the Supreme Court found this suspension to be unconstitutional because given the time of the expression being during school hours and the place being on a public school campus, the manner or form of expression was quiet, passive, and not disruptive, and did not infringe upon the rights of others, meaning that this did not negatively affect the school environment. So it was allowed to be, this was an acceptable form of expression in the school environment. Now, some may argue that a limitation of students' rights is a limitation of creative expression. However, this is not the case. These individuals must realize that it is to the extent of which this expression occurs that matters. Taking a look at the Bethel versus Frazier Supreme Court case, one student's creative expression, Matthew Frazier, one student's creative expression was delivered through a speech nominating a fellow student for a student body position during the school assembly. This creative expression or speech that he delivered contained sexual innuendo and incited disorder amongst the student audience, causing some of them to shout, mimic sexual activities, or even feel discomfort with hearing such material. Frazier was suspended for his actions, and the Supreme Court found that this suspension was constitutional because given the time of this expression being during school hours on a public school campus, his manner of expression was inappropriate because it was vulgar and obscene and caused a disruption in the general function of the school environment and amongst the students there. Now, as we've learned from Tinker versus Des Moines, it can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional right of freedom of expression or speech at the schoolhouse gate. This means that while this is a form of creative expression, the extent to which it was exercised was not appropriate for school. It is only a matter of how the content of your message and how you are expressing it that can be limited or acceptable in public schools. So from this we can come to the conclusion that a limitation of First Amendment expression is necessary in public schools to ensure the general safety of others on campus, as well as promote a healthily diverse learning environment. But these limitations limitations must be presented to students in ways such as a student code of conduct. This is an excerpt from our student code of conduct that governs how students are allowed to exercise major acts such as protest or their right to freedom of speech and expression. If students understand that they understand time, place, and manner restrictions, the fact that the content of their expression matters, and the codes outlined in their and the rules outlined in their student code of conduct, they'll be able to effectively exercise their First Amendment right to an extent that is clear and respectful. Thank you. What questions do you have?
All right, 2 questions for you. First one, what evidence did you gather that you didn't use, and then why didn't you use it?
So when I was doing my research for this, I came across one source, the National Coalition of Censorship, and I realized that the information they were discussing was why students' rights shouldn't be limited, but I realized that they could have bias because they were against censorship in schools with reading material or limiting students' rights. And another source that I found that I didn't really need to use was from the National Public Education Association, and they were outlining to what extent freedom of speech is allowed in schools, but I found that it wasn't really supporting my argument because they're only giving specific instances that I may not have wanted to apply to this presentation.
All right, and next question, what advice would you have for other researchers that consider this topic?
I would suggest that when considering this topic, you are able to go into a deeper aspect of this. So instead of just focusing on the First Amendment in public schools in general, you can research an aspect of First Amendment, such as specifically protest, or specifically religion, or specifically any kind of expression, like a specific form of expression that would be limited in public schools.
Thank you, you're done.